Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Michael Noland here. You know, you may have noticed in the last week I've not put out very many videos. I've put out one with me walking in my backyard, and of course that was to announce the sad passing of Gary Rosington from Lynyrd Skynyrd. But tonight what I'm going to do, if you notice behind me, I don't have my usual thumbnail up that I do in my videos, right? That's because all week I've been putting in a new computer system. This, of course, is the screensaver for that computer. As many of you know, I have been running this entire channel on an iPad and an iPhone. So we're updating everything for year 2, and baby, we're ready to go. But what I'm doing tonight is sharing a full episode from Royce in the House. I've never done that before. I asked Royce if he'd be okay with me doing that, and he said, go for it, brother. And that's what I'm doing tonight. We're going to be talking about just how dangerous of a profession rock and roll can be in more ways than one. We discuss a lot of things surrounding what it is that kills some of our favorite rockers, and it's not always age. But some of this will be dealing with some very sophisticated issues. And if you or anyone you love has somebody who has made any statements regarding suicide or taking their own life, please make sure that they get in touch with the Suicide Prevention Hotline. This helps, folks. I've worked in the medical field. I know it helps. But anyway, we only discuss those rockers who have passed on because of that, due to the fact of that being part of the problem with the rock and roll lifestyle itself. You know, we mention a ton of bands in this video. This one's going to be a long one, so I invite you, like all live streams, it has its hot spots and then it calms down for a second. If you're bored for any minute, just start hitting that fast forward button, and I guarantee you, right up into the very last minutes of this 2-hour presentation, we discuss some of the hottest topics out in music, the music industry, and the music icons that we love today. Now, the reason I'm adding this video is to make sure that you have something to watch during the weekend, and it helps me as I'm updating for this new computer system. You know, for me to even show up at Royce's, I had to tear down my studio and rebuild it, and then today when I was editing this video, I had to go back. It's been a ton of headaches, folks, but it's worth it, and it only means better things for the channel in the future. The reason I'm doing this is, again, I've mentioned Wayne from Soul Train Bro. You know, that guy did me such a big favor. This channel grew so fast because of his shout outs, him featuring full videos from my channel. And I'm doing the same thing tonight for Royce. Royce is at over 700 subscribers. He wants to get to 1,000, folks. Get on over there, sub to this channel. His show has gotten better and better and better with each and every episode recently. Of course, my 2 co-panelists besides Royce, Dan the Man, go to his channel, of course. This man has such an interesting life, and it's all there on videos on his channel. And of course, the mighty Bruce from the R&B show. You know, he's joined us, and I think this is his 3rd appearance on Royce in the House. This, I'd say young man, but he's actually a little older than I thought he was, has so much to offer. I'd say he's Gen 2 of classic rock, and that means something because it gives a perspective from his age group. Hopefully, we've shot a video that you'll love. All right, so I don't usually say this at the beginning of my videos, but if you enjoyed tonight's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel as of yet, it is so easy. All you have to do is tap that subscribe to the tribe button, then again hit that top bell icon, and you'll be notified of all my future videos. The reason I say that at the beginning of this video is this is going to be a bit different kind of sharing than I usually do with Royce. The only thing I've done is adjust individual volume levels of each and every individual co-host so that we get a more even blend. Other than that, I haven't touched this video. As you guys know, when I've shared portions of Royce's videos, this hasn't always been the truth. But tonight, this is all Royce, man, and I'm just along for the ride. And if you enjoy his channel, get on over there and subscribe. All right, so I'll be back next week, and that's where we're gonna kick this whole channel into phase 2, folks. More on that later. In the meantime, enjoy a nice trip to Royce's house. I know we did, and I'll be seeing you real soon as we kick this channel into high gear. All right, Royce, take it over.
All right, we're live, everybody. Forget that babbling just now. I want to welcome everybody to the show. And first thing I want to do is introduce my co-hosts. I've got to my next to me up above is Dan McNew, Just the Facts Man. And I know you're gearing up for some pretty big stuff, you know, with these eclipses and things like that. I'm constantly reading stories about what you've got going on.
Oh, yeah.
You want to anything you want to say about that right now? What you've been doing with those the eclipses every year?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the astrophotography and anything that's up in the sky. And I saw the total solar eclipse in 2017, and it was amazing.
Okay.
You know, it's something you can't describe. I mean, you have to experience it. And of course, now we have another one coming up next year, April 8th of 24.
Nice.
And everybody's starting to gather on these different groups. And I've got a group now that we discuss where people are going to go to see this. Where are the RV parks? What's the best city? What's the best weather in what cities? And, you know, everybody's in the planning stage now. And I can guarantee you there's going to be a run for that center line in April, on April 8th.
I'm sure there is. So anyway, So that's Just the Facts, Dan, Just the Facts Man. And I highly encourage everybody to go and subscribe to Just the Facts.
Yes.
Dan's a great guy.
I did.
A fun show. And directly below Dan is my good friend Bruce from the R&B show. And Bruce has got a fantastic channel. I want everybody to know that Bruce has really got a good show. Very articulate, knows what he's talking about, well studied. And if you go watch the R&B show, you will subscribe to it. The same with Dan, you know. And next to Bruce is our good friend Michael Nolan, The Bottom Line. And round of applause for Michael Nolan, The Bottom Line. Anyway, Michael has an amazing show. I mean, I can remember when I toiled through these like 3-hour shows and stuff like that. It was hard to even stay awake through some of them. But you know what, Michael, your shows average anywhere from like maybe 12 to 20 minutes, right? And you have this, and I have never seen that explosive growth. Every time I watch one of your shows, I think I'm about 45 minutes too long on my shows. You know?
Well, you know, I think my largest or longest video.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. The longest video I've ever done, I have one video that's over a half hour. I've got a handful of videos that reach up to 24, 25 minutes, anywhere from like 21 to 24. The rest of them, and I have videos that are like 5-6 minutes long. I just put out a 2-minute video.
Gotcha.
It was just me reacting to Gary Rosington's death. About a day too late, you know. But you know what, Royce? These two guys, forget about what's happening with me. These two guys, I just found out when you were introducing Dan. Dan's into astronomy. I am into astronomy. Every time I learn a little bit more about Dan, I just know, man, this is a guy I just would love to hang out with, you know. I mean, I've got a lot in common with a lot of his interests. And you know what? This guy here, I'll compare. I said it in the notes. People probably saw my comment. I'll compare his show to anybody on the internet, no matter what the size. And I'm talking about channels that are way past my size too, you know. So I think you got a great panel here with you to top it off. We're good.
I really enjoy all of you guys, you know. I think it's a great panel too. So we're going to talk about Highway to Heaven and Stairway to Hell, and it's like death by fame. Now the music industry is like well below the national average are musicians and composers and songwriters, guitar player, well below the national average for longevity, lifespan. And this has been going on with musicians and artists and comedians for, I mean, centuries. It's nothing new. But of course, our current pop rock artists are keeping it alive. Never mind the glamorous things you hear about being a rock star and stuff. This is a really brutal business. We have so many deaths by not only suicide, homicide, and accidents. Think of the plane crashes and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to get into every one of those categories. And
Great.
I'm going to start out. I've got a couple of charts, and I actually loaded them on the screen, and they turned out absolutely horrible. I'll give you an example of just how bad they were. You really can't even. No, I got rid of them all. They weren't worth keeping, but they were just all blurry. So I've got them in my hand here. And the first one I want to show is the life expectancy of pop musicians. Okay, and what this shows is the bars on the top, the blue and red bars show the general population, female and male, red being female, blue being male, and it shows the life expectancies at 65 and 70 years old and going up from there. Now you look down below, the red and blue lines are female and male, rock and pop artists, and it's a whole different story. We're talking about a 20 to 25 years difference in lifespan.
Wow.
Between rock and pop stars, all genres, country, whatever it is, and the general population. And I've just been trying to wrap my head around this. Yeah. And there's been all kinds of studies done, and they say that that the pop rock music industry needs rehab. It's so toxic, And so the other little chart I have, it's actually three charts in one. It's death by accident, death by suicide, and death by homicide. And that's this little thing. Like I said, there's three different charts here, and I'm going to start with percentage of deaths by accident. You've got pop musicians compared to the general population. The general population is almost a flat line across the bottom of this chart, the top chart, flat line across the bottom. You can see the difference with the blue line up above, and where the general population is like 4.65%, pop musicians are 25.9%, and that's deaths by accident. And we're going to get into that. I've got a bunch of stuff here.
So are you saying, Royce, that 25% of whatever rock deaths are caused by accident, or is that 25% of what? So just so that I understand what.
Well, just 25% of their deaths are by accident.
Okay.
25% of pop and rock stars' deaths are by accident.
Okay.
And early deaths, compared to the general population, which is flatlining at 4.5%.
Right.
Then if you look at the percentage of deaths by suicide, again, the general population's flatlining, really they're like 1% death by suicide. And the percentages go as high as 9.6% for the music industry, pop rock music industry, compared to 1%. And then you get down to percentage of death by homicide. And that's a similar thing. I mean, if you look,
I'd like to see the difference between these statistics now and before rap.
Oh, yeah. I was going to get to that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Because I think it's skyrocketed since that has been kind of part of the pop.
Yeah. No, there's pages devoted to lists of rappers,
Yeah.
And, like I said, from 1950 to 2010, the percentages of deaths by homicide grew from about 0.35 to 0.7 in the general population.
It doubled.
And in Iraq, went from 2.8 It went as high as 6.5. It's dropped a little bit the last couple of years down to 4.9. 4.9 compared to 0.7. You know, so
And
yeah,
how far back in time does this graph go?
These graphs start in the 50s and wind up in the 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah. They're
Probably with about 1955. Usually, most people say 55 was the first year of real rock and roll. Bill Haley in the comments, Rock Around the Clock, that was considered by most people the first true rock single that did real well.
So it basically covers my lifetime, because that's when I was born. So
me too, January of 1955.
Let's go ahead and throw out some names. Steve Midtham just joined us. Steve's a great guy. I just want to say a quick hi to Steve. I guess I could have just said it, but hey, this gives me one more notice here. Listen, let's go ahead and take a look at list of murdered musicians. Now, I know there's one that's really near and dear to Dan.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to let you go ahead and talk about that, Dan.
Well, in 2004, a reformed band out of Pantera, they reformed as Damage Plan.
Yeah.
And they were on their probably about their second tour in 1 year. And it was basically their last stop before they came back to Dallas. And they're on stage, and a crazed fan got on stage and shot and killed Dimebag Darrell. And, Darrell was a friend of mine for off and on for 20 years. Same as Vinnie Paul. I knew him off and on for 20 years. And, but yeah, so what's odd about the whole thing, he was assassinated on the same day, different year that John Lennon, December 8th. So it's kind of odd, and both killed by a crazed fan.
That's the really odd part about it. A crazed fan.
Yeah.
Well, of course, John Lennon was killed by a crazed fan also.
Yeah.
But that's the first name I wanted to bring up was John Lennon.
Right. Me too.
He's probably the biggest star, to be murdered.
He's not just the biggest star for me, Royce. I almost called you Rachel, and not because I was thinking of Rachel's ghost. My daughter's name is Rachel, and we've been talking all day. But you know what? I've got to tell you, that's almost Dan was friends with Dimebag.
Right.
He lost a friend. He lost somebody very important to his personal life. But Dan, for me, John Lennon, I never met the man. I never got to even see him in concert, at least with Paul. I've seen him, 3 times, but John, no. But up until the day he died, I didn't have a favorite single composer because that position was tied with John and Paul. And so I was over at a friend's house. We were watching Monday Night Football, and Howard Cosell came on. All right. Now, everybody has seen, replays of this on YouTube, but I'm going to tell you, I mean, 1980. All right. I was 25 years old. All right. Still real young, still a musician. My life was completely changed by this man. And when I heard about it, I clearly remember we got sent home when John Kennedy died.
Yeah, that's right.
And this was just as powerful a memory as John Kennedy. Or, by the way, Dan, how about the Challenger crash? You're very close to that crash. You filmed it.
Yeah, the Columbia.
I'm sorry, Columbia. I'm sorry. But the thing is like I said, I'm into astronomy. I'm into the space. I'm a Trekkie. I love all of that stuff. I've got so much interest. And these are events in my life that personally, I cried when John Lennon died. I can't think. I didn't cry for John. I didn't cry. My mouth fell open when shuttle crews were destroyed right and left. But when John Lennon, he taught me. He never once met me, but he taught me how to write a song. He taught me how to play guitar. He taught me to appreciate rock and roll. So much. And this idiot who shall not be named, Harry Potter. I mean, this idiot.
Right.
And we're still paying his room and board.
I know.
I say ship that mother off to a country that can do him in the right way if we can't change our politics. Because you know what? There is no doubt he's guilty. There's no doubt.
Right.
It's not like, okay, there's a 2% chance that maybe that he's not guilty of this. No, he's guilty of assassination of one of our spokesmen for not only our generation, but this man always had a plan. We were waiting for him to come out of retirement, which he had just done. I was so frustrated. I bought that album, just like McCartney albums, the day it came out, and I watched those singles sink on the charts. And then I got pissed off, like you've never seen me get pissed off, when all of a sudden, Woman, it's a #1 hit, or however high it got. And all they did, watching the wheels sink, everybody thought he was impasse. Everybody had forgotten about him because he took 5 years off to raise his son, and some murdering bastard who I wish the waves in Hawaii had drowned.
Yeah.
Who he patterned his entire life after John. He had an Oriental girlfriend. He saw himself, he wore wireframe glasses. What a sicko.
Right.
I'm sorry. You can say he's mentally ill all you want. I don't care. I'm tired of, putting.
I'm tired of. That shouldn't even be an excuse.
Yeah. If there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt regarding murder, it's time to bring back a certain chair we all used to not want to sit in.
He took an important person away from everybody.
I have two very profound memories associated with that forever.
Okay.
One was my mother was a first-generation Beatles fan. I was 11 when John was assassinated, and I'll never forget the night the news reports are coming in. I remember sitting on the living room floor, my mother standing up, and all it is tears running down her face the whole time, right?
Yes.
The next day at school, somebody, principal or whatever, must have been a Beatles fan, because instead of the national anthem that they used to pipe over the PA, they actually played 2 Beatles songs in tribute to John Lennon. And those two things combined showed me how profound an effect this man had on an entire generation of people. I mean, it was unbelievable. And where I really felt also, because that also really regenerated my, love of the Beatles moving onward ever since.
Right.
But where I really felt it was in the anthology, where I could only imagine, like, John, with like the added wisdom and the passage of time and maybe having mellowed a little bit on his stance with the others, his presence missing throughout those interviews is where I thought, God, if we only still had him then,
I know.
Yeah, Bruce, you're so right, because you know what? We were stuck with little snippets from past interviews to tell a story. Even in the book form, at the very end, they did a quote from him about him having the last say. I think they handled the whole anthology project under the circumstances. I think, you know what? I'll tell you what. I think it was very humble, a very truthful. I mean, I've read just about anything and everything on the Beatles. I lived and breathed them, Bruce. And by the way, you can't be in your 50s. I just did the mental count. You're in your 50s. Dude, I always thought you had to be like 30, 38, maybe on the outside.
And in a couple weeks, I turned 54.
50? Well, happy, upcoming birthday.
Yeah,
but, dude, Royce, can you believe this guy? Where is he? Where is he?
No, I can't.
Does he look like I wouldn't have guessed he was in his 40s.
No.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
but
John.
I'm used to looking a lot younger than I am. I'm only 90.
So. I hear you.
There you go.
I usually wear my hat backwards. It takes 10 years off me.
Yeah, I was wondering why you were wearing the duck-billed forward tonight.
I don't know.
You know, speaking,
I like to mix it up.
You know, speaking of John Lennon, you know, back when I was in the service, I was stationed overseas, and my best buddy was a huge Beatle fan. I'm a Beatle fan, but he was like, he knew everything about the Beatles.
Yeah.
And we were discussing one day, you know, what's going to happen when one of the Beatles die? Who's going to be the first Beatle to pass away? And we didn't speculate on who it would be, but we discussed on how the world would react. You know, when one of the Beatles dies, you know, because we knew it was going to happen one day. You just don't know when, you know. And the
conversation started coming up when there were rumors that one of them had died, Paul McCartney.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I was in junior high when that rumor really hit the so-called shite fan, right? And I mean, every 14, 13, 12 to 15-year-old girl was in mourning, and we were all trying to find out how this, you know, the best looking, the cute, the guy who could write granny music, no, not Paul. He was the sweet looking, he was the poster boy, you know. And then, but boy, we started we started looking at all of these rumors on it, putting razor blades up against that to make the, 111 XI he die type of thing off the Sgt. Pepper's. You know, everybody said 3 left because there were like bullet holes on the back of the the name of Abbey Road, and I go, you could draw a 5, you could draw an 8 with those dots, but I bought into it. 28 if, never mind the fact that he was still 27. But you know, the thing is, think about how powerful that is. You know, I bought that book, by the way, later on that discussed all of those rumors. And in 2009, I picked up a copy, and my daughter was just now my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter's, she must be 40. I would imagine she's got to be about, oh Lord, where am I now? Anyway, she's in her mid 40s, but my youngest daughter, she's still living at home with us, and she's about ready to transfer to university. And back then in 2009, that would have made her about 10 years old, just getting into the Beatles. The Beatles and Led Zeppelin always reinvent themselves with a brand new crowd. Now, my daughter knew I liked the Beatles, but I wasn't at that time, and since she had been born, really listening to a lot of Beatles music because I was actively in a band. I was writing new material. I was trying to write stuff. So I was listening to a lot of grunge at that time, right? And so she kind of discovered the Beatles because Dad had all the Beatles. He could talk Beatles until he's blue in the face. And then she loved the sound. And she got into it just like I did when I was in 8th grade. And all of a sudden, these clues started coming out, and she would beg me to tell her. So I got the book. It was one of the first books she just read all the way through by herself. And that's how powerful it is. But, you know, we're talking about how, you know, the death toll and all of that, to kind of bring all of that back into focus. You got to understand one thing about rock and roll, because I have lived the rock and roll lifestyle. I have been on the bands. I've gotten to near, I would consider I was near regional, okay? Almost breaking out regional, but always, and for a million reasons. It's a boring story. But I'll tell you, I got to a point in my life where I had to quit drinking alcohol. I went into rehab. I am a recovering alcoholic. I don't bring that out on my channel. I haven't touched a drop of alcohol in 30 years. If I had continued that, there would have been no bottom line. I would never have known Royce, and you would have never known I existed, because I would have been dead decades ago. And the drugs that come in, and the willingness that it takes to sell your soul to get to the next level, you know, where other people are saving up for their favorite car, and then the car leads to a pretty girlfriend. The pretty girlfriend leads to a great job and a college career because you want to maintain that, and you start leading a more successful life. Us musicians, we're still 15 years old in our heads. If I was in a band today, I'd still be thinking, what are we going to put on the liner notes, man? You know? And so is it a dangerous lifestyle is actually the question. And yes, you know, real dangerous lifestyles. How about police officers? Those are pretty dangerous. But if they keep their heads about it, they're for the most part peace officers, and the smart ones don't ever have to draw a gun. They're just smart and whatever. But it's dangerous. But soldiers going in, you know, at key times, man, they're definitely. But rock and roll's the same thing. You're joining a freaking army. You go in and you get conditioned. You condition yourself to take whatever drug that would kill a normal man. Drink enough alcohol that would kill a normal man. Stay up X amount of times on cross stops that would kill a normal man. You strain your brain and put so much focus, if you're a writer within that genre, that to do that is an early grave alone, you know?
Michael, you just made the whole case for the show tonight.
You know, another thing too is
it's like belonging to a circus. Sorry, Dan, let me just finish this last part and I'll shut up. It's like I also used to sell high wire tickets, and I knew those circus people. I worked as part-time carny in the summer, setting up all the fair rides at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds. Because, and trust me, there's a dangerous lifestyle. Carnies and circus folks and rock and roll. And see, America doesn't go. I didn't mean that, guys. I was counting fingers. This one kept out. But see, America used to go to circuses. And that was the entertainment. And then they started going to rock shows. Well, the new circus performances, the new people dancing dangerously on the high wire. Ask Sandy Denny if it's not dangerous being up on stage. And of course, Dan's friend, you know, I mean, Dimebag Daryl, to ask him if it's dangerous just to walk up on stage and share some freaking music. Somehow, you know, it's a horrible, horrible lifestyle to make 80. And Sir Paul McCartney so far has done it and still can outdraw any living act on the planet now, including the latest. He can outdraw, what's her name? Taylor Swift. I wish Taylor goes swiftly away. Oh, Tay-Tay. Oh, Lord. But any of them. You know, who's the chick that sits on the glass horse and wears a blonde wig doing her Godiva imitation? It's about the 9th time we've seen it on her latest album. I can't think of her name right.
Gaga?
Yeah.
Beyonce?
Yeah. Oh, but Gaga's just as bad, Dan.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying these people aren't talented, but it's not quite art anymore. It's almost, it's almost, to me, like it took a Frank Sinatra to turn all of those, you know, the crooners into art. It was Sinatra that turned it into art, not that Bing Crosby and, you know, everybody that you could think of. Then the Rat Pack, out of the Rat Pack, all of the famous, Tony Bennett, all of them. They all had in their own way the same kind of voice that Frank Sinatra was delivering, except for he had the genius to bury the notes. He's the first singer to, I did it, it was me. You know, that deep dive, right? I call it dive bomber vocals, and hit that. But he would mess with it even before the Beatles did Rubber Soul, which we've talked about that being the first rock album in history. Anything released by any rock band, including the Beatles before that, never really truly released an album. And I'll defend that unto my death, Your Honor. But here's the deal. All of that is dangerous. That is you might as well train to be a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret. Okay? And I'm in the martial arts, as you know, Roy. So are you. I'm a second-degree black belt. I competed. I've bounced clubs doing that. I've gotten my nose broken. I've gotten my bones broken in a fight. There's a dangerous lifestyle for you. But you know what? I came out of that a lot more healthy than I did out of 45 years in the in the rock and roll business. That's all I can tell you.
Well, since we're talking about dangerous lifestyles, I got to throw this in. You know, we hear a lot about our police officers, and I totally support the blue. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, me too.
When I look at statistics, I'm in the construction industry. I think we die at the rate of about 10-1 over police officers on our job.
Yeah.
Construction's a dangerous job.
Yes, it is.
I've stepped on air hoses and I couldn't have blinked and I hit the ground off a roof. I was handing up plywood off a second-story deck to the roof, and the wind caught me and blew me over backward like a sail. And just fortunately, there was a big pile of plaster sand down there, dangerously close to the automatic cement mixer that probably would have broke every bone in my body. And I've come off of ladders and had a strap in my arms, 4 screws in my hand, 4 screws in my forearm. I stayed in there for months. Then they sliced it all open and took it back out. Shattered my heel bone framing a roof when someone pulled a rafter out from underneath me. And I mean, any of those things, could have been.
Well, maybe that's why I like your voice, because you know what? Before I ever met you, I had tons of friends in construction. I had 4 or 5 sheetrockers, friends, several carpenter friends, each of them taking a position, or a different portion. Matter of fact, I even worked security for developing housing communities.
Oh, did you?
Yes, because I was there at night. I had the skills. Right. I wasn't a policeman. I had long hair, but I had certain skills that I could bring to it, and I could keep the riffraff away. But I knew, I can't tell you how many friends of mine in construction, they not only got hurt seriously, most of them are still alive, so no major early deaths. But I can name person after person after person after a major injury, spending 5 to 10 years trying to get back on the job because that's all they know.
Right.
And it's the only thing that can pay them enough to keep them at least in the what do you call it, middle income these days, to upper middle income, And it's an art. It's an art into itself, or at least an artisan kind of gig. So I love that whole kind of person. And you have some of the hardest workers in the world. Well, rockers are hard workers just like them, only we're not disciplined. I mean, we'll play guitar until our fingers bleed. So that's disciplined. But show up at a gig on time? I did, but I'm a rare musician. Half the time I had to threaten band members. You be here an hour ahead of time for sound check. Because if you're not getting paid tonight, no matter when you show up. Right. It was a rule,
I think one of the most dangerous things, for bands, especially newer bands, when people go out to do a show, to watch a show, it's usually a couple, they go out once a month to a concert or whatever, and it's a big deal. And so when the show is over with, they'd like to meet the band, and the band, if they're nice at all, they'll go towards the fans, and they'll party with them and everything else. Well, for that,
well, look at the message Steve Mitham just put up.
Band, but for a band, they do it more than once a month. They're doing it almost every night. So they're seeing this party atmosphere every single night. Versus, I guess people don't understand that, and you got bands like Rush who never did that. They went back to their hotel and they just went to bed. They didn't do the, throwing the TVs out the window and the Zeppelin
pretty rare
stuff.
And you look at the longevity. So is that a coincidence or not?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
but even without the, destruction of hotel rooms, because I was never into destroying I worked too hard for my equipment. I certainly wasn't going to mess up other people's cars or their rooms, their business, but I was also a different kind of musician. A lot of the people I'd hire, I always would have 3 or 4 extra amps. And I'm playing bass, but I've got 3 or 4 guitar amps. I've got a PA system because I don't want to be at the mercy of the club or these other guys in the band. Right. You own the PA system, it's your band. plus I would start it, and I made it clear it was my band. I'll make the decisions. But once that was done, it's like I did the managing. I did getting us gigs. I did, for the most part, all of that. But this last band, I've talked about Quinn Hedges. Quinn Hedges right now, his latest album, mastered by Bob Ludwig. He plays the Sacramento entire Valley area. He's played arenas. He is regional. He's beyond regional. And one of the best guitarists in the world. I got this call while I was in. The band I was in was called No Man's Land. Michael Noland, No Man's Land. No land. All right. Take that, Eddie. Anyway.
That's like in a God of the Vita in the Garden of Eden was actually the name
right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, well,
they just adopted it, you know.
Yeah, I got the idea, not like from Plastic Ono Band or anything like that. There was a friend growing up. His name was, what was his first name? Donovan Stark, I think. And he had a band. And first of all, he was a year or two younger than me, and he was twice as good on guitar. I hated him for that. But, and then he named his band Stark Raving Mad, which I thought was the best damn band name in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, but I learned from this kid really fast. So when I did that, well, when I was in No Man's Land, which was the last band I was in, after that, I did a short stint in Area 51, which was a duo. But with No Man's Land, I had just finally got, I had purposefully brought in another writer. I'll control the band, but the music is, if we get another writer, we'll do half your stuff, half mine. Well, this kid calls me. He's in college at the time. I don't know if he had hit 20 years old yet. He was working on his 4-year degree, and he says, yeah, I'm calling because, you know, you had an ad, and I want to be in your band. And I said, oh, we just hired a guy. I'm so sorry. He goes, firing. You made the wrong choice. I go, what? No, I can't do that. I told him, he goes, dude, I'll play on the phone. And I go, oh, he's going to start playing tapes and try. What is this? So I go, all right. And so I said, play some blues. All right, slip it down into E. All right, play a minor pentatonic scale. Show me show me some modal playing. You know, and everything I asked him to do, he did it, and he goes, you want me to play that again? Or I can go up, and he'd be talking as he would be playing, or I could go down while I'm coming off and so this was Quinn, this probably 19-year-old kid. I'm at the time 45. All right, I'm 45, and I'm going. I had already, the writer I had just brought in, Steve Serra, who he was this funkadelic, he called himself the super freaking Puerto Rican. Best songwriter. I discovered him in a bookstore performance, and I told him, oh man, I write rock and ballads. If we can get your funk in, I think the two of us. So we got it, and we were getting people together. In comes Quinn, just because of his guitar skills. And then he had 3 or 4 or 5 songs, and he goes, well, I'm not very good at writing. And if any of you guys have listened or gone over there and watched this stuff, he's an excellent writer. And I would beg him. All I could do was get 4 of his songs into the band, because what I wanted was, oh, now we're getting like Fleetwood Mac without the girls. Now we've got 3 main writers, you know? And so this is what this whole mentality, Royce, is surviving boot camp to make a band even launchable. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and do, yeah. So many musicians, though, they don't look at it as a business. It's still us guys in the barn, you know.
I'm interested to see, you know, Lou Mars, who used to co-host. He really got involved in his band and everything. And I think they're getting really close to taking off and wanting to, you know, tour. And it's going to be interesting to see what his sound is, you know.
Yeah, Lou is one of those guys. I was just like him until I finally got fed up. He's a bit younger than me, too. So I stayed on the circuit probably well up to his age easily. But, you know, talk about Lou. Lou is always looking to understand the angle, to understand the business and survive with it in the moment. And you know, him and we often wouldn't agree, if you remember.
Yeah.
But I love Lou. I love Lou, and you know what? His was just a different point of view, you know.
Well,
And
Lou and I had a long running disagreement on not publicly, but it was on a you know, messenger type thread, and he wanted me to pretty much just change the show and start promoting you know, Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, all these people that are selling out these huge stadiums night after night, things that aren't done very often. And I was like, Lou, I think you need a what did I say, Dan? You were in the thread. I said I think you need a Taylor Swift tribute band. Yeah, that's what you.
Oh yeah.
that's interesting because you never told me why he all of a sudden wasn't on. You kind of gave an explanation that he was busy, of course, but I always thought there was something as to why he wasn't here.
He told me well in advance that he was going to do that for you know, to come on the podcast a little bit longer, but he's got a lot of stuff going on. His book was going to get released. His book has been released.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, his book's been released, and he's really gotten into the band, you know, and they're trying to prepare to leave, you know, and it's just.
Is he still hooked up with
Dana?
Dana, yeah.
I would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've got a gig coming up the next month or so.
Yeah,
but because I saw one of their where they did one of his songs, and of course we all heard her stuff. I think they, if they can keep their egos from insurging onto each other, and really just go balance, I think they could do something. Now, will they become? You know, both of them, they're not going to hit the youth market, but they could make still some serious change. They've got the writing ability, you know.
Yeah, for some reason he was big on the youth market. He made a comment to me early in our thread that he needs to connect with 50,000 or what was it, 50,000 young people in the next 6 months, 60 days or something like that. It's like, what are you talking about? You're not a young person. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I was querying my grandson shortly after all that happened of what are you listening to, you know? And he loves music. My grandson does. He's 17 years old. And we started talking. I started asking him about different young bands I was finding out about. He goes, Papa, just stick to what you already know. In other words,
that's how I kind of look at it.
In other words, you know, 17, 18, 19, 25-year-olds, they really don't want to hear from 65-year-olds or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have their own peer group.
Yeah, exactly.
Their own peer group, you know.
The way I look at it too, you know, I got the style of music that I listen to. I enjoy what I listen to. Not everybody's going to have the same taste, and I'm not out there trying to convince everybody that you need to listen to what I'm listening to. I'm not trying to convince anybody. You know, if you want to listen to it, fine. If not, you know, I don't like hip hop at all. You know, but that doesn't mean someone else shouldn't listen to it. If they want, that's fine. Listen to it. You know?
Well, I kind of got into it a little bit. I had my '56 Chevy Nomad. I had 700 watts of power amp in there with a big box subwoofer and stuff. And I tell you what, you know, I was struggling to find music I always loved bass, going back to my soul music days. I loved bass. And,
me too.
You know, right. And so I was starting to listen to some hip hop for a lot of reasons. Actually, I actually enjoyed it, but I loved the bass. You know, I could pull that 56 Nomad up to a plate glass window. There was a bass knob down between the seats, and I could crank that bass up, and you thought you were going to knock those windows out, you know, either that or you were going to restart somebody's heart. It was like a defibrillator, you know.
I like
it's the subwoofer bass. Subwoofers utilizing lower frequencies with in taste is one thing. Taste doesn't exist in hip hop or rap, if you ask me. First of all, both genres establish themselves and have gotten a foothold thanks to shows like you know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that accept them as whatever, and they're using the remaining power of that show to ingratiate and give themselves pedigree that they don't have. All right, everybody. I heard Norman Maslow talking on Rachel's channel today, or no, I think he was talking about this yesterday, and he said, "So what? It doesn't matter, if that the Rock and Roll Hall, everybody's making a big deal about that, and they should just, relax because it doesn't matter. I mean, rock and roll had its roots in country and the blues, and we need to be more inclusive. Now, I know if Norman sees this, he's going to probably think that's an oversimplification. I'm just saying what I remember him saying, and he usually is a lot more eloquent than me. All right. And he made a good point. If we were going to name the show the Music Awards or something like that. Yeah. But here's the deal, and here's what I disagree with Norman. Hip hop and rap. Now you can do a trick shot with this. So I know pool players who could sink this right around the frame. Is that you can say, well, early rap with boom boxes based on some of the rhythm and blues that were based on rhythm and blues that rock and roll, and so therefore no. What people bought, what sold the first gold then platinum albums had nothing to do with the rhythm and the blues. The whole medium had changed by that point.
That's exactly right.
So there is no connection. And same thing with hip hop, who came out of rap, and a couple of.
I really disliked hip hop and rap for the longest time. To me, all they were doing was grabbing a rock song,
that
we're all familiar with, and rapping to it. And
Vanilla Ice,
the heck out of it,
Yeah, Vanilla Ice.
I didn't get it. It seemed like a total ripoff to me.
Yeah, you know what? Vanilla Ice. I'll tell you who he is. He's Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son. He had a point. He had a small part in Gran Torino. In the movie Gran Torino, the old man comes up and sees this teenage girl, who's a neighbor of his, being harassed by a couple of black punks. And her white boyfriend, now she's Filipino, and she has a white boyfriend who's played by his son in real life, Scott Eastwood. I love him. Anyway. Clint gets out of the car and goes, "You damn bitch." I can't remember exactly what he says, but he tells him, "You're trying to act like, hey, man, he's got his hat backwards, trying to be the black young guy, like a lot of young white people that I've seen, the teens and stuff, trying to look hardcore inner city." And he says, if I was them, and he points to the black guys, he says, "I'd want to kill you myself, or I wouldn't want to hang with you." In other words, he's acting. All right. Rock and roll is not a freaking act. All right. It's not. It. First of all, folks, I'm serious about this, and I can prove it. It's an art form, and it's an art form that is as sophisticated as what Bach brought us, as sophisticated as what was his name. Da 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 da. We were talking about that. The toccata and fugue in D minor by who is it? Brahms? No, Brahms. Bach. Bach. That spooky organ music could come right out of a Uriah Heep or Led Zeppelin, especially off the Houses of Holy album.
They've all taken a cue from classical.
Deep Purple. How many times have you heard him rip off Amadeus Mozart on his guitar? And he did it way before Van Halen mechanized rock too much. That's my biggest. Fantastic guitar player. But if he had been the only one who sounded like, see, we got Hendrix, and we got a couple of guys that almost sounded like him, Robin Trower, even what's his name? Stevie Ray would do it, but for the most time, he stayed on his side of the picket fence and blues and stuff. But yes, you're right, he could do it, but he wasn't known for
Hendrix cover. He did a lot of Hendrix covers, though.
Yeah.
Hey guys, but see, while I still have the chance, let me just give a shout out here. I'll put his last comment up. I don't know if you, Michael, if you or Bruce have ever been to Psycho's Platter's show.
Oh yeah,
He's had a YouTube show for years and years, and
yep.
He's a good guy, and I don't get too much of an opportunity, but once in a while I'll pop into the chat and stuff like that. I think our hours maybe conflict a little bit, but Psycho's a great guy, and
oh, I'm subscribed to his channel. Yeah,
he
is. Yeah,
he's a good guy, and he's been working at it for a long time, and he's entertaining. So anyway, I'm just giving.
But he's right. I
agree.
I agree with his percentage there too. There is still good music. There are still good bands. I've covered 4 or 5 recently on my channel. And guess what? Those videos did paltry compared to when I talk about Pink Floyd or Black Sabbath or whatever. Now, the problem is that the real good music, and yes, there's a couple of hip hop songs that don't kill me. I still haven't heard anything rap that.
Hey, Michael, you've heard me talk about this. Let me grab this real quick.
Yeah. But anyway, I was going to just say, you know what I'm saying? There is, I'd say 10% about covers it, and it's great. It's really great. But see, the level of expectation has dropped, folks.
My wife and I, 1972, Long Beach Arena, Exile on Main Street concert by the Rolling Stones. And you have no idea how long I've been searching for a good original pressing. Well, I found it yesterday.
Wow.
Awesome.
Found it yesterday. It's a first American pressing, actually. You know, of course, this is a double album set. It's a gatefold. Interesting gatefold where you open it up and then pull from the inside out the 2 albums. They have the nice heavy sleeves, which really need to be replaced with the better plastic sleeves. But anyway, I have those too. So anyway, it's God damn that ring light. Exile on Main Street. And I've been looking for this for years. A good copy, a good, what's original American, so not quite original British, but original American 1972 pressing. So I was real excited when I came across this.
Yeah. And talk about the band really playing the rock and roll lifestyle while recording that album too. That album probably cost all of Stone's lifetime.
There's the original 12 postcards are in here that came with it.
Awesome.
And they're all in pristine condition. So everything's here. So anyway, that's what I was looking for. I found it. I'm happy about that. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about some of these musicians that were murdered. I mean, we've got the great Sam Cooke, and he was murdered, but it was called a justifiable homicide. And I don't know the circumstances of it, but that guy got off. Justifiable homicide.
Well, he was messing with his wife, wasn't he? As I recall.
Well, and you know what? I always assume that. I don't, unless I know I won't say it out loud. But I seem to always assume that when a musician's murdered, you know. But it depends on circumstances. But that was probably the first thing that comes to my mind on a whole bunch of these homicides, because musicians were popular. Even Robert Johnson was, I think, poisoned. And he was sleeping with the wife of a bar club owner,
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and I think that guy poisoned him.
I think that was here in Dallas.
Did that happen in Dallas?
I think that happened here in Dallas, down in Deep Ellum.
Everything happens in Dallas, I'm telling you. They were on the Chitlin circuit, a safe place for them. But anyway, so Marvin Gaye murdered by his father. I guess he kind of had mental issues.
I guess murders.
And I remain a big Marvin Gaye fan.
Yeah, that just goes to show too. I mean, these entertainers, they can be killed by the fans or the family.
Yeah,
Or
anybody.
the family. Yeah.
Jim Gordon, murderer. Jim Gordon.
Sonny Boy Williamson.
The drummer for. I was thinking drummer for Derek and the Dominoes.
Oh, I'm not sure who that was.
Gordon, wasn't it Jim Gordon? Have I got that wrong?
I've got that album, but I'm not sure who the drummer is.
He wound up murdering his mother.
I think you're right. I remember hearing about that. Let me look.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Do I have? All of a sudden, I think I got that name wrong, but that's the name that came to me. I always thought it's something Gordon, isn't it?
Jim Gordon. He was American musician, session drummer in the
Yeah.
late 60s and 70s.
Yeah. That's him.
Okay.
Great drummer.
Murdered his mother, was sentenced to 16 years in prison to life.
Bluesman. Oh, wow. Okay. Sonny Boy Williamson, bluesman. He was shot to death, unknown assailant. Selena, remember Selena?
Oh, yeah.
When J-Lo played her, and what a job she did. Oh, man. That kind of catapulted J-Lo into, superstardom playing Selena.
Yeah.
And that was, who's the person that murdered it? It was someone close to her. Is her
let me see if it says that here.
Her maid or somebody.
Yeah.
Corpus Christi. Yeah, she was murdered in Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
No, Yolanda Salazar. There's another name here. I wonder if it was Yolanda Salazar that did it.
I think that's her. Yeah.
Okay, the next two I'll just throw them out together, and it's Tupac and Biggie. Yeah, Notorious B.I.G. And there was that rap kind of hit a pinnacle of hostility between West and East, New York, New York and the West Coast out here, and of course they had P. Diddy and all of those people back there on the East Coast, and Dre was like a big thing here, and all these people wanted Dre here. But anyway, so there's always that rumor that they were killed more or less by each other's people, And I've seen the movies on both of them, and we'll probably never know. I know that Tupac went back to New York, and he was going to meet with Biggie. And he came, he showed up dressed with all kinds of gold, and he got jumped before he got in the elevator and went upstairs. And they just practically beat him half to death. And rumor has it that maybe led to the shooting of the Notorious B.I.G. I don't know. Anyway,
Angela in the chat just mentioned too, the person that killed Selena was the lady that ran her fan club. There you go.
Oh, okay. Well, what was that then? Let's see. Was that Yolanda?
Yeah, I believe
Saldivar.
Yeah, I think that was her name.
Yeah, that must have been her. That was the only other name that was on this little list here. Okay, so we had got a jazz saxophonist, Curtis Owsley. He was stabbed to death. Lee Morgan, he was shot. He was a jazz trumpeter. A lot of these people I don't really know. I don't know if anybody else knows them. So I wasn't going to get real heavily into these unless it was somebody kind of, halfway recognizable. And let's see, rock and roll singer Walter Nothius Jr. He was shot. Leonard Bro, Los Angeles, California. He was strangled to death. He was a guitarist in a rock band. Let's see, a reggae drummer, Carlton Barrett. He was shot. Another reggae. Actually, this Peter Tosh. It was Peter Tosh, and also Dennis Lobin and two other individuals tortured him to death. Peter Tosh, reggae artist, was tortured to death. I didn't know that. Let's see, who else do we have here? Joe Pastorius III was beaten to death in a bar fight. He was a jazz bassist. Robert Ramirez, the drummer for Edgar Winter, was beaten and stabbed to death.
I know somebody.
Think of that list.
Well, I know somebody that died and came back to life.
Who was that?
That was Phil Anselmo, lead singer for Pantera, back in
You're
1990.
He's still the lead singer, right?
Yeah, like I said, he came back to life.
I know, but I didn't. Yeah.
But in 1996, Pantera had a concert here in Dallas at Starplex Amphitheater, and evidently he was having a lot of back issues, and he was taking heroin behind everybody's back. Plus he was doing a lot of drinking, to deal with the pain from his back.
Oh wow!
And he overdosed, and I was actually at that show. And after the show, when the show was over, with White Zombie, I think, came out, he was backstage and he passed out and he died. But they gave him CPR, and they said his heart stopped beating for 4 minutes, and they got it going again.
Wow!
And I tell you what, he stayed on drugs even after that for quite a while. It wasn't until he got his back surgery a few years back, in the early 2000s, finally had his back surgery, got rid of the pain, and got off the drugs. Now, I saw Phil over here in Fort Worth probably about 10 years ago, and they had these VIPs that came in, and they were telling all the VIPs, look, Phil will be out here in a minute. He goes, but we're going to be watching everybody. If we see anybody slip him any type of drug, any joint or anything, first of all, we're going to jump on you and beat the shit out of you. Then we're calling the cops. So I knew, and Phil changed after that. He was like a different person. But I haven't been around him for several years now, so I'm not sure if he's drinking again or not. But
wow,
he's out touring, with the Pantera tribute.
Well, after that, I have like a page and a half of rappers. And to be honest with you, I'm not gonna read any of them because I've never heard of. The only one I've even heard of was Jazzmaster Jay, and he was a DJ, pretty well known for a while.
But it's probably a pretty big list, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big list.
You know what? I also just wanted to mention too. Part of your last list too. Without before we move on, Jaco Pastorius. I mean, such an influential bass player.
Yes.
Rob Trujillo from Metallica actually did an excellent documentary on him. So if anyone has not had a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. He struggled a lot with mental health issues, but was a real in that kind of jazz fusion rock pioneer with.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Bruce.
Yeah, and he's really, when you think of like the fretless bass style as it got more popularized and kind of co-opted in rock, he's like the main influence I see for that.
I see. Okay.
I mean, Sting was hugely influenced by him and brought some of that into the Police as well. So just want to give him a shout out.
Okay.
Oh, Jaco is one of the best bass players to exist. I agree with Bruce.
Brilliant talent.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're gonna move on from the homicides to the suicides. And when I say these lists aren't complete, believe me, they're far from complete because we'll start out. Okay, Marilyn Monroe was on the top of my list, and I have two of her albums. One is called Incomparable, and it's a 2-album set, and the other one actually has a nude picture of her on. It's a picture disc. One side she's just dressed, pretty with her blonde hair and lipstick and stuff. The other side was out of the Playboy spread where she's nude, And I got in trouble for showing that once, even though I did some little cutouts and put them over her, over her breasts. They weren't that big of cutouts, and all of a sudden that got taken down, So I'm extra careful these days. So anyway, Marilyn Monroe was a singer. Back in the day, you had to sing, act, and dance to make it in Hollywood. You had to do all three. That was just mandatory. You couldn't just come in and act. If you didn't sing and dance, you were in trouble. So after that, suicide list is Kurt Cobain, and I'm a big Nirvana fan. I listen to Nirvana quite a bit.
This was massive. This one was a massive one for amongst my generation. That was like the equivalent of a John Lennon.
I know, it was almost like the end of the genre,
It really was. It spelled the end of that. And again, I'll never forget, where I was at the time hearing over the radio in my first apartment. I was living on my own. And, it's one of those that you just, like with Lennon, you don't believe it. You hear it, you don't believe it. And, even leading into it, he was on a rocky path. There was already rumors of a suicide attempt in Rome. And so there was some bad kind of mojo.
Things were going in the wrong direction. And that was supposed to be a double suicide, him and his wife.
Right. Just,
she must have said, honey, you go first. I'll be right behind you.
Was that how it turned out? I hadn't heard that part of it. I thought he was in the home by himself and it was a shotgun, self-inflicted. But it was a pack.
It was supposed to have been a double suicide.
Wow.
But for whatever reason, she didn't go through with it. I'm gonna read that story again. I've always heard it was a double suicide. It was supposed to be a double suicide. but maybe that didn't go off, and he did this independently on another day or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and he escaped a rehab facility that he was in, jumped out of that early, went home, was alone,
Right.
and made the, obviously the successful suicide attempt that we know. But sad, incredibly sad.
Yeah, it really was, because talk about, he was cut down before he had a chance. There were rumors he was running out of ideas, and he was scared to death that was part of what he was facing, is his own lack of being able to drive new material. I think that was part of it as well. But you know what? I think, it was nothing more than writer's block. I think he would have continued to define that sound. And you know what? Nirvana was the one band, they let it all. They were the Beatles of the, of the so-called, Seattle crowd, the grunge crowd. And
no, I agree. I thought Kurt was almost like a modern day, Bob Dylan. He was just a great storyteller.
I think he was a modern day John Lennon, Paul McCartney kind of combo kind of guy. He loved the Beatles.
Okay.
He was like a major Beatles fan
of like Beatlesque hooks, but also with punk energy. That was like the perfect blend that he had going on. But also, he was someone that I think he was a bit tormented by the success, guilty about it, and was going to really, I think, had a much broader vision for the band or for himself musically. He wanted to do stuff outside that. You could see that with him introducing acoustic stuff into their sets, getting a little resistance on that early.
Yeah.
Saw the results.
I love the Nirvana in New York MTV Unplugged.
Yeah,
that's one of my that's one of my favorite albums. Two albums.
Right.
But anyway, I love that album. It's so good. But you guys, let's see.
But they were redefining Nirvana music up until the day he took his own life. Do you see what I'm saying? They were still growing.
Right.
Other grunge bands had already done their growth, and they were adding to it, like the Stones added to what the Beatles offered with the British invasion, right? It was a slightly different, and they developed their own way, especially after the Beatles split up. Alice in Chains. Actually, Alice in Chains, I believe, didn't they put out Jar of Flies before In Utero? And because I think they did the best hard edge to acoustic transformation out of all the grunge acts. I think they really own that little sphere. But see, Nirvana had that, but they also, Nirvana sounded a bit like all of those grunge bands. And there was a reason for that. Just like the Beatles sound, I can name 4 or 5 tracks that sound just as heavy as anything Led Zeppelin ever did.
What a great group of talent. I mean, look at the drummer, Who
would have thought? Matter of fact, he's the one guy everybody thought was out of a job, right?
The bass player was great. I mean, that was a great band, very talented.
Whatever happened to the bass player?
So let's.
He's kind of semi-retired now. He comes in and out for special projects. He still hangs with the Foo Fighters and what's his name quite a bit, but they're no. He had the most level head out of the band. And the drummer, what is his name? I can't think of his name right now. The drummer.
Chris Novoselic of the bass player.
David Grohl.
David Grohl.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, why couldn't I think of that? He's probably the biggest name in rock and roll right now, if you ask me.
Yes, that's right. I would
Dave
Grohl,
they're still putting out fresh music. They're still touring. They're writing albums so they can tour. They've changed their direction 4 or 5 times, and they had one of the best drummers I ever saw in my life.
Taylor Hawkins.
I was a fan of him because I was a fan of Alanis Morissette, another artist that does not get her due.
Dave Grohl.
No, you're right about that.
Dave Grohl ended up being on the board of directors of the organization that I created.
Wow.
Really? Awesome.
Now, if he still is or not, because, I turned it over to Rita Haney, which is Dimeback's girlfriend, and I dropped off the board of directors for many reasons. And then Dave Grohl stepped in, and I haven't heard from him since. So I don't know if they're actually still doing that event anymore. But
Okay.
I thought that's pretty cool. Dave Grohl replaced me.
Yeah, but Dave Grohl was brought in because they couldn't find a drummer that would sit with the other two members, and he was always in fear of losing his job. He especially with the leader. It was like and I remember clearly not thinking he was the most talented member of the band. I always thought, oh yeah, he's the drummer. He's a good drummer. I like him there. Who would have ever thought that guy would wind up being able to talk about from 0 to 60 in a half a second?
Yeah,
the first Foo Fighters album, all him.
Yes,
Bruce.
Right.
Yeah, he wasn't really. He didn't really have a band in the beginning. Yeah,
right. And he played the drums and all the instruments, didn't he? Pretty much. He might have brought one or two people in for a spot here or there, but as I recall, it's a McCartney album.
Yeah.
And they're big friends now. McCartney's written with him. If McCartney writes with you, you must be at least on a certain level as a writer. Right. I think Dave Grohl, especially when he did the heavy acoustic thing when what was that album where it was mainly him just on acoustic guitar and oh God, some of the dark notes chosen, the motifs, and yet you watch their videos. I think they're the only band that knows how to make a video anymore. What's that?
That's an amazing story, Dave Grohl's.
Yeah. And
that's as good as anything out there, really.
Yeah,
and Taylor Hawkins was, even though he wasn't writing those songs, he was putting a lot of input while in the studio. And it was, you have to be a drummer, first of all, and you have to be a songwriter to understand how important Taylor Hawkins was. He was like Ringo on steroids. And everybody goes, well, Ringo wasn't that great of a drummer. You don't know what you're talking about. Go back to class, and I'll see you after class, and we'll give you the test all over, because Ringo was early on the best drummer in rock, bar none. He was doing fills and stuff that people still can't. There are videos out there where people try to play his parts to classic Beatle cuts, and they have trouble doing it. And one of the reasons they do is it's his diminutive style, his natural talent, and the fact that he's a freaking left-hander playing a right-handed kit. It developed a whole style, and that almost sound that's all over rock. You can just give it to Ringo. So if you don't think Ringo's a great drummer, so when I say Taylor Hawkins is him on steroids, I'm talking about a songwriter's drummer, songwriter's drummer.
Absolutely. And one
I
thing
agree.
I have to say
with
this about the Foo Fighters.
Dave Grohl is a musical genius. Yeah.
Dave Grohl is considered the nicest guy in rock and roll.
And I have to say, too, the Foo Fighters, to this day, and I've seen a lot of shows, I was lucky enough to catch the Foo Fighters before, we lost Taylor Hawkins. And to this day, it was the loudest show I have ever been to. I couldn't believe it. It was like a wall of sound that almost bordered on being uncomfortable. You acclimated to it, but it was loud.
Well, Bruce, I never have seen him. I want to ask you something, and don't give me the answer I'm looking for. But I would have I'll make a comment and then I'll ask you if this is true. I would imagine when you went to see them that your eyes were every bit on Taylor Hawkins as it was David Grohl. Am I wrong with that?
No, because he kind of reminded me of like when I would watch The Police, like Stuart Copeland would capture a lot of my attention because he was a very physical drummer, but not only that, a great harmony singer for that band too. So amazing. He was a perfect kind of counterpoint, even visually, for Dave Grohl.
Yeah. Well, Alanis would worry about, because he would leak from the band and take center stage with her without leaving the damn drum throne. He's the farthest guy backstage. The drummer usually is, unless they bring him up and share the space for like some of the super groups. But he was always in the back.
His name is Buddy Miles from the band of Gypsies, who I saw in concert when I was 17 years old at the Las Vegas Convention Center. big guy, huge afro, drum set right at the front of the stage, and him up front. Just, it was quite a spectacle, to be honest with you. Okay,
but
so
again,
we
it's
had,
the Beatles that showed a drummer like that. Ringo was the first drummer on a high, on an
he was up,
elevated
he was up
platform
high,
because they were the freaking Beatles, you know?
Right,
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay, Chester Bennington, suicide. Mindy McCready and Chris Cornell, and I just read that he'd hung himself. Somehow I'd forgotten that. Yeah, Soundhouse.
That one really hurt. That one really hurt me.
You know what's odd though?
Yeah,
when Chris Cornell committed suicide, you know, Chester Bennington was his kid's godfather.
Oh,
then,
really?
Then later on, Chester Bennington committed suicide. You know, so those kids, I feel sorry for the kids.
You know, it kind of runs in waves like that. I mean, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, the Cornell one, I actually ended up writing an article about Cornell's passing. You know, because that was one I was I think I mentioned in the last live stream we did. I was a huge Soundgarden fan, a huge.
Oh yeah, they were big. That was a good band.
Yeah, Chris Cornell, the singer, as a songwriter, and you know the shocking thing about Cornell's death is that was really like, of all the grunge guys, he was like the last guy you would have seen doing this, because he had been through his substance abuse issues, but he was on a good creative role at the time that this happened. He was doing great solo work. He was back together with Soundgarden, and they were touring regularly. He was on a good creative role. He seemed healthy, in a good marriage. You know, his second marriage, and you know, again, just shocking. It came out of nowhere. Couldn't believe it.
What happened, Bruce? You're really
to Zep Pearl, my good buddy Zep Pearl. He's got a great show. Everybody Zep Pearl, and subscribe to his show. Very entertaining.
V stands for Victor.
Okay.
He's got an awesome channel.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so how about Avicii? Any comments there? Or Wendy Williams? Chester Bennington? These are all suicides.
The Chester Bennington, again, following the Chris Cornell one was shocking. Again, because that one seemed to come out of nowhere too.
You know, I met Chester Bennington one time in Hollywood back in 2007. We were out there for they were inducting Dimebag into the Rock Walk, and they had a big party at House of Blues down the street that night, and we had a big auction. We had these guitars that all these rock stars had designed, and they were actually at my event a couple years before that, and so we had the big auction, and Chester Bennington was there, and I got to meet him and a bunch of other people. It was really cool night.
What about the band of suicide, Badfinger?
Oh, wow!
Oh, yeah,
that's right.
Half the band killed themselves.
Was that at different times, or?
Yeah, it was back in the 70s, but it's because it was all over finances. What it was about.
Yeah, business, bad business.
You know, they were broke. They never got any money, and Pete Ham killed himself. And
you know, that's not that unusual. I mean, I think Jimi Hendrix was given a little allowance when he needed some spending money. That's about all he ever saw.
Yeah, but Badfinger, you'll find few bands in the rock classic era that was more ripped off and underpaid than Badfinger. Yeah. And there was a lot of drama. They had all these hits. Their records sold phenomenally. They sounded close enough to the Beatles, yet they had their own sound. Nobody was giving them the criticism that people are giving Greta Van Fleet these days for sounding like Led Zeppelin. I always wonder about that. Greta Van Fleet, bad, sound like Led Zeppelin. But Badfinger, good. ELO, good. All right. They sounded like the Beatles. And yes, they are good. You're right. But Greta Van Fleet is good too. All right. So anyway, but Pete Ham also, there was some relationship problems, very connected to that famous song, I Can't Live. If living is without you, what is that? Without you, whatever it is. And that song says a whole lot of it. He depressed Evans. So Tom Evans, was it Tom Evans, or am I thinking Mike Evans, the drummer, Tom, somebody else? Anyway, Tom, the second guy to kill himself. And it wasn't just like 2 weeks later, Tom kills himself. No, this is a decade or two or half later. And again, similar issues. And Joey and Tom had put out an album, a really good album, by the way, called Badfinger. And they got ripped off again. It didn't sell. It got no backup. He got depressed, putting it, like I said, a dangerous damn lifestyle.
You know, I actually did lights for Badfinger back in 1992.
Yeah.
When they came
I'm jealous.
And I got to talk to Joey for a while, you know, and it was pretty cool talking to somebody that actually knew the Beatles and worked with them.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Well, my cousin, when I went back to North Carolina in 72, I spent a year in high school there, Waynesville, North Carolina. My cousin David, who I lived with for a while, and his sister, who was actually my aunt, who was 12 years old at the time. I was 17, if you can imagine that. Hey, it's North Carolina, people. What can I say? But anyway, when I first met him, hi, welcome. Nice to finally meet you, Michael. Welcome to the house. He goes, I just saw Badfinger. And it was like, he was talking about the whole show, and they were frustrated. He says, I've never seen a band so unhappy. And he said that they would call, turn out the bloody lights, you know, because they were turning lights on into the audience, ruining the atmosphere, you know, for a band so, I mean, think of it. Their material's wonderful. And they were coming out of that Beatles sound. And God.
I just want to ask you, Michael, take a look at Josh D's comment here up on the screen. I know you and I are both huge Led Zeppelin fans. And I know you like Greta Van Fleet a lot too.
Well, here's how I learned Greta Van Fleet. First of all, I hate NPR, but occasionally I listen to their tiny desk concerts, right? And they were on. And they were doing a couple of acoustic versions. And actually, Josh, they spoke quite highly of Led Zeppelin in that interview and said that, yes, it was they were an influence. And of course, at the time they did that concert, they had just released their first, what I consider their first album after the fires, which is actually officially an EP, but it's over a half an hour by 2 minutes. To me, that's a full album, and it's my favorite cut by them. They've been trying to change their sound because of all the criticism, and I think that's a mistake because somebody needs to take it from where Led Zeppelin left it, that style. And you do it by start. That's how Led Zeppelin got started, Royce. Led Zeppelin took blues and grabbed it, ripped them off, and even did like they would say they arranged it, and they even stole arrangements.
Well,
okay,
heavy Led Zeppelin 1 was heavily into
right. But look where they went with it eventually. See, you need a launch pad.
I'll never forget a launch pad. I walked into a heating and air conditioning contractor's like warehouse office. He was in with some customers, and I sat there. I listened to about 3 songs, and it was Willie Dixon. And finally, he came out, the contractor, and I said, "Hey, who's this blues guy singing Led Zeppelin songs?"
and talk about taking his arrangement too. You know,
right.
Okay, but good stuff came out of it. That's what I'm saying. Good stuff came out of it.
Yeah, and they made light of it, and they were willing to pay when it push came to shove.
Right.
But how about Butch Trucks? Anybody have any comments on Butch Trucks? Or
didn't
Donny Hathaway?
Didn't Butch die by crashing into the same tree as Dwayne? Or am I thinking of the wrong?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody in the chat knows. Zep Pearl knows. Zep Pearl knows everything. Led Zeppelin took the blues and helped revive. Yeah, no, it was good for everybody. The blues artists started getting recognition.
Yes.
Telling music again. And we got some great music, great rock.
And once again, Led Zeppelin wasn't the only band doing it. They were just the biggest band and got the most criticism. So
Wendy Williams or Nicholas Drake, any comments? Johnny Ace. Ian Curtis or King Jong-hyun? King Jong-hyun. Okay. All right, we're gonna skip out of lists of suicides and go into lists of accidental deaths.
Oh Lord.
And you know what? That takes in everything: booze, drugs, airplane crashes, helicopter crashes. I mean, Elvis Presley. I saw him on a list of suicide as well. I'm like, no, that's crazy.
He didn't commit
Elvis didn't commit suicide. Elvis was an accidental death. You know,
slow suicide, maybe.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
And of course, Jimi Hendrix, one of my all-time favorites. I've always been a huge Hendrix fan. I actually had him above Led Zeppelin for years, but that's all changed now. You know, Jim Morrison of the Doors. I think Jim Morrison, Doors, is a fantastic artist. You know, and you know, and I was an older teenager during that era. You know, and it was an amazing time to be a rock fan. Let me tell you, we had nothing but fun. Michael Jackson, once again, accidental death. And that was that propofol that he was, you know, being administered by that one doctor so he could sleep. I guess, you know, I remember that Coke commercial he was in when his hair got lit on fire. Yep. And he had some serious scalp burns that you know, gave him pain for the rest of his days. And he had a hard time sleeping and stuff like that. But he had a hard time.
That was a shocking one that kind of came out of nowhere too. I mean, I remember when the news broke on that, and that was like, because of course, such a big name, and he was still fairly young, and he was coming back too.
Yeah,
he was coming back in a big.
Coming back too.
Yeah, he was going to do that big residency at the O2 Arena. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so Michael Jackson, Stevie Ray Vaughan, helicopter crash.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was a big loss there.
Huge.
I don't know. I had 4 or 5 of his CDs. I probably still have 4 or 5 of them. You know?
That's another one from Dallas.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then of course Otis Redding. That was a plane crash, flying from one concert venue to another. And we did a show on that. And Dan, you provided the video where they were actually pulling the plane, the plane Otis Redding owned, out of the water. You know, and. Yeah, so that was really sad, and Otis did very well for himself. He got paid, you know, very, very well for the times and stuff, and bought a big.
What about Leonard Skinner? Killed half the band in a plane crash.
Well, yeah, Leonard Skinner. That I was coming up on Ronnie Van Zant and Steve and Cassie Gaines, all in the band. Yeah.
Yep.
And the last remaining member, of course, I think you just did a show on it, Michael. The last remaining member.
Yep.
Of.
But he was the last remaining original member.
Yeah.
What's his name? The drummer who replaced their first drummer very early on. He's still around. He's still around.
Yeah, Artemis.
I have a hard time going to see a Leonard Skinner concert now. You know, with the replacement drummer being.
Well, I wrote to Michael. This is by accident, but I was going to see them by accident actually this summer because I was going to see ZZ Top finally.
Right.
And they were going to do that double bill with the remnants of the, you know, of
Skinner.
And now, you know, he's gone. So it's a curious thing to see if they're going to still try and carry it on.
Right. When I went to go see him, it was almost by accident. I was aware of them. I knew that they were big because of the hits. And they opened up for The Who at the Cow Palace, which wound up being one of the top 50 rock concerts of all times as voted by PBS. I was there that night. Keith Moon tried to punch out Pete Townsend. Then he passed out on drums. Pete got up to the mic and he goes, "Does anybody play the bloody drums? You know, so we can finish our set." They brought a kid up from the audience.
Yeah.
He became a famous session drummer out of it. And Leonard Skinner opened up for him and did a better show than them. I went to see The Who. I wasn't that interested.
That's the legendary concert.
That's
but
amazing.
I was a fan from that point on.
You know, in 1977, I saw Leonard Skinner on January 1st, 1977. Ended the year December 31st, 1977 with ZZ Top.
Wow.
Wow.
I got to see ZZ Top too. Laughlin River Run, Laughlin, Nevada. That was fun. Anyway, you know what? Somebody mentioned the Black Crowes, you know, and they're kind of sounding like the Stones. Might have been Mike Precoat fan. And I got to tell you, I saw the Black Crowes front row seats at the Laughlin River Run. My buddy was a high roller. He got front row to everything. And we're sitting in the front row, and he's on the end. He's on the aisle where the aisle is. And all these what I would call Woodstock dancers were up there with beers in their hands and doing all this crazy dancing. And they kept spilling their beer on Dave, my buddy, who got us the seats. And he just got up and just stomped out after about 3 songs. And I sat there and watched the concert by myself. But anyway,
I loved them, but I always knew they were kind of, you know, a Stones clone.
And you could kind of tell that. But I tell you, this must have been a really off night for them because they really didn't sound very good. I was disappointed.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I've never seen them live, but I'll tell you what turned me on to them is they kind of came in through, you know, MTV. They had a couple of hits on MTV, and I went, wow. Yeah, and here's what I felt about them. They were the other band that could have been the Stones that wrote the other hits the Stones didn't write, at least to start off with. At least their first couple albums.
I think everybody liked them. They were popular.
Yeah.
I was just this one show, but I don't think they'd been out in a while. You know, I think I hadn't heard about them in a while. Then all of a sudden,
now the brothers can't stand each other half the time. They vie for power all the time. I'm starting to read a book on the whole thing by one of the band, and he said he was surprised as hell in the forward. I've just begun it that they survived because you know they lived the rock and roll. We're talking about it tonight. He is truly amazed that the band survived, that they're all still
reunited.
alive.
I mean, they've reunited.
I need to know from Zep Girl.
The brothers are talking.
Kyle is still elusive. Who are we talking about here?
That's the drummer from.
That's with Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the replacement drummer. Okay, that we were talking about earlier. Okay.
You know, I don't know if these two people are on your list or not, but we ought to bring them up. I know Zep Pearl mentioned one of them, Terry Kath from Chicago.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Accidental shooting by his own hand. And another one that falls under suicide is Brad Delp from Boston, the lead singer from Boston.
That's right.
Okay.
I mean, those are 2 big ones.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right on. And of course, we have The Day the Music Died, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper.
That's the first one that comes to my mind every time. You know, Death in Rock and Roll by Accident, Buddy Holly, you know.
Right. Okay, so now the Black Crowes have been touring since 2021. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So we already mentioned Ronnie Van Sant and the Gaines brothers. Dwayne Allman. That was another plane crash, right? Yeah.
Motorcycle.
No, motorcycle. That's what I'm saying. Didn't I think Butch Trucks about a year later, almost on the same day, died plowing into the same damn tree.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
I think.
Is he related to Derek Trucks?
Don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that is one amazing.
Well, maybe I'm getting it messed up with the Allman Brothers. Okay, so you're talking about one of the Allman Brothers, right?
Well, Derek Trucks. You talk about an amazing guitar player. He had B.B. King on one side of him.
Okay, and, I'm getting. Yeah, I think I've got my wires crossed. Who's the other one? The other Trucks?
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a. Oh. I'm not sure. I don't.
Huh. I can look it up.
Yeah.
More to come.
Okay, so while he's looking that up, Dwayne Allman, John Denver. Now I was I used to fly a lot. I had my own little 4-seat airplane, and I was very familiar with these Burt Rutan Canard style airplanes and stuff. And in fact, my across the street neighbor in one of his hangars out there was building those composite airplanes for people. And what happened is John Denver, I think he had just bought this Canard style airplane with the 2 little wings up front. And they were supposed to be kind of a handful, but they were pretty Butch's Derek Trucks' uncle, I think. Okay. Thank you, Angela. So anyway, John Denver was flying one of those Canards, those Burt Rutan designs that you built yourself. They were home built planes. You bought the kit, and he died flying that plane. I think he was flying it on his way home after buying it.
And, yeah, you know what? I met him at the Oakland International Airport. He came in at about 2 in the morning, flying his own plane. I was an airport coordinator at the time, meeting flights and coordinating what needed to be delivered all over the Tri-County area. And I got a chance to say hi, and he was dead tired. And he goes, yeah, mumbled, but he was a nice enough guy.
I'll tell you, Derek Trucks is an amazing guitar player and slide guitar player.
Right. He's a younger.
I think Patsy Cline. Was that a plane crash or a car crash?
Plane crash. It was a plane crash.
Plane crash. That's what I thought.
In fact, the anniversary I think was just a couple days ago.
Okay. And then the last one I have on this list, my last and final list. Jim Croce, Rick Nelson, his fiance, Jim Croce, his fiance, and 5 members of the Stone Canyon Band all died together in a plane crash.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much it as far as Zep Pearl brought up the 2700 Club, and yeah, that a lot of our greats died at 27. Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And some people say the whole 27 thing, although you can't deny the list that's there, is a little more of a myth, because I think the average age of death is more like 54 or something like that for rock. Not 27, but there's definitely a 27 club, and I've even done a show on the 27 Club. So I'm not denying the 27 Club.
I think Gene Simmons even wrote a book on it, a few years back.
On the flip side of all this too, you've also got rock stars out there that lived very drug-induced lives and are still pushing 80. I mean, they look at David Crosby. I know he's passed now, but he never thought he was going to make it to 30.
No, Chris Elliott's right. Robert Johnson was the first member of the 27 Club, and the story was poisoned by a club owner where he played because supposedly he was having an affair with the guy's wife.
I was, by the way, Royce, I was thinking of Barry Oakley, who died a year later after Duane Allman. He wasn't on the same tree. I guess I bought into the old thing, but he did die 3 blocks away from Duane Allman had passed away the year before. And when you mentioned trucks, I thought Allman Brothers, and anyway, just to kind of clarify that.
Here's one that not really a rock star, but he was killed in an accident. Sonny from Sonny and Cher.
That's right.
Oh yeah, skiing accident.
That's right. Yeah. Boy, that tore Cher up. Up until that point, she always played it kind of cool and aloof with Sonny. So the dream is over. Kind of, you almost felt that. But man, she had to go in for serious therapy after that.
I never heard that.
Well, they had a reunion, I believe, on David Letterman's show. Not too long
they did
before he was killed.
Yeah.
Right. Did they sing "I Got You, Babe"?
I think they did, didn't they? They did.
Familiar.
Yeah. They had a weekly TV show, Sonny and Cher.
Oh yeah.
And it started with that song and ended with that song.
Never missed it. For some reason I was a fan of that show.
I know. That was a good show. It was fun to watch.
Yeah.
She used to really get Sonny all the time.
I mean, Sonny was the butt of most, if not all, the jokes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was part of the frustration, because as she started playing like the smart one, the one who was one step ahead of Sonny, she actually started believing in herself by going through that. I think that's why she did so well as a solo artist and later coming out of the shell, because when you see her first movie role, that she kind of got some nice criticism for it. But then compare that to her later 80s and early 90s films. I mean, she really turned into a fantastic actress as well as that. But Sonny, behind the scenes, as soon as that skit was over, He was in control. He was the boss. He was the writer. He was the producer. He was a bit hard to take. He was really hard to take.
And then became a politician after that.
And yeah.
Was he congressman or senator? I can't remember which one, but
No, I think he was just like mayor of.
No, he was in
no,
he was in Congress. He was in Congress.
I think he was a congressman. I don't think he hit Senate, but I forget. Or a representative.
It was like Palm Springs, right?
It was for a section of California. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was the Palm Springs area, the high desert.
Probably. I mean,
I've been wrong before.
Well, there was somebody that was mayor of Palm Springs.
I thought it was Sunny. I'll look it up later.
Where was Clint Eastwood? Where was Clint Eastwood mayor of?
Oh, that was
Carmel.
Yeah, Carmel.
Right.
Yeah, I've got a video of visiting his ranch, Mission Ranch. He bought. Developers going to stick a bunch of condominiums on it. He bought it, and he's got a nice restaurant there. Benny and I went there for dinner. I made about a 20-minute video of that, and then we went down to the Hog's Breath Inn, owned for 27 years by Clint Eastwood. Sold it to a friend of his. Now, that's the funnest part of the video, really. You go down there, and we walk in, and there's Clint Eastwood, pictures up all over the place, whether they're spaghetti westerns or whatever. And
great food.
There's always a bunch of people inside, and a bunch of people outside too eating. And so I started kidding around in there, and I asked the bartenders and the waiters and stuff, Clint Eastwood been in lately? Oh, he's in all the time. And one of them goes, he was in last night. I go, oh, he was. And of course, everybody in the whole place is listening, right? And so we started having fun. And one of the guys goes, yeah, he came in. He didn't speak very good English. He came in, signed my check so I could get my money. He didn't even order it anymore. And like we're all laughing and stuff like that. And that's when they were showing me the Clint Eastwood beer.
Yeah.
And the guy picks up a bottle of beer and goes, Clint Eastwood gets a penny for every one of these sold. And I wished I would have bought some. I would have sent some to Dan. He was asking about them. I wanted to know if they were shipped.
I've got a bottle of Ozzy Osbourne wine.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Oh,
but you have to bite the neck off the bottle to partake of it, right?
Michael Chavez says Sonny Bono was the mayor of Palm Springs and then became a congressman after that.
Okay, good.
See, there you go. You challenge my knowledge, and what happens?
But here's something we didn't cover tonight. It's a little bit late, probably, but what about all of the older rock stars? Now they're older. We've got Christine McVie, we've got Jeff Beck, we have David Crosby, who was it? Gary Rosington, and several others. The Bachman Turner Overdrive guy. All right. But it seems like a whole lot of these people are passing away. How come we don't get cause of death anymore? And is that connected to a certain year that's not very popular to mention here on YouTube? We don't get causes of death anymore. A short undisclosed illness is now, I haven't seen anything in our society that has generated the idea that it's not considered good business, show business, to tell us what the cause of death is. So that hasn't changed. What has changed? Think about that. It's not a real popular discussion on YouTube. Okay, and I'm not bringing it up beyond that. But think about it.
I did a show on our aging rock gods and what the future holds, and you know what? It's going to be coming hot and heavy now. I mean, they're 70s, 80s.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of abuse in their early lives too. And
right.
I love some of those little spoofs you see. We got to start thinking about the world we're going to leave Keith Richards.
I remember, because when I was a kid listening to all this music, 12, 13 years old, those were the adults performing. Now I'm 65 years old. Now, how the hell old are they now? I mean,
yeah,
right.
That's what I'm saying. Right. I mean, it's going to be like weekly or monthly now. There's just so many of them that are so old now. Right. I don't know who's going to take their place. I really don't. I mean, because these are the people I've been listening to my entire life. You know,
Well, they've already got their replacements. They honor them every year at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's LL Cool J.
oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm serious. If you're waxing poetic on that question, as a rock fan, the people who could take their place aren't getting the ink and aren't catching the interest of the younger audience, which gets back to what Royce was saying regarding when we were talking about the ex-host co-host on this show, Lou Mars. And even in Fleetwood Mac, and I can't stand her, but every once in a while she makes sense. Stevie Nicks was saying when Lindsay wanted to make the double album, she said, no, let's make this, because he thinks everybody's on the carpet and reading the liner notes, and they're just not anymore, which I felt was a poor excuse for not putting out a double album, especially by a major band. But she was right. Okay, the new audience accepts music if it's playing in the background of, and some great music's being made for video games. All right. But you know what? If it's not in a 15-minute episode of something else, it's multimedia. I keep saying it. The first artist that comes out and really creates a multimedia empire and offers us something that MTV, VH1, the record companies, good songwriters, great bands used to offer us with each release. In other words, I think the album for the future, for the long-range future, is dead. It's dead. Okay, as the official release media. Okay, I think there needs to be something that we get either digitally, or if it's going to be a physical copy, then it would include vinyl as well as paper books. It needs to be packaged. You're getting $500 for a remix with alternate takes. You don't think people would pay an extra penny for something that was a total story in so many different aspects? Oh, and here's his book on poetry. The first person that can do this successfully, you have to be talented, is going to be the next superstar. And they'll be talking about that person, that band, that woman, that man, like they will be talking about the Beatles. But it's still in the future. Nobody's grabbed it yet because we haven't grown up to our own freaking technological expansion yet. Right. Not even the people who know how to program. I do a little bit of programming. I can do simple little things. All right. I've kept up with it, and yet I'm not, in all of my tries at being music, I couldn't do it. But I'm telling you, I can see it.
Is it ever really going to take the place of what you and I are listening to, or any of us are listening to?
It could. It could. See, when it becomes an art form again, guys, when we can take whatever artists are releasing and say it should be hanging in the Louvre, like Dark Side of the Moon, Abbey Road, okay? How about the Allman Brothers live? There are rock releases that's it's frozen in time art. It is as exquisite as Leonardo da Vinci's paintings, his statues, his inventions, his weird bat wings on flying machines and helicopters and some. You know what I'm saying? That man took it. He was the first superstar since Jesus. All right, he really was. If you think about it, he ripped off this, he ripped off that. Look again. The man was a genius, and we need a Da Vinci.
Just quickly, I wanted to add to this. What Michael's saying too is that I do think you're onto something, because what has to happen, even among a younger generation, is that with music artists, there has to be some product that people are willing to actually pay for too. Because what happens is, if you think back to like when we, collected records and all that stuff, even if you bought a record that was bad, the fact that you paid for it meant you still spent time with that physical object and gave it a chance and gave it a listen. Without the investment, people can just go in and sample a track. Without the financial investment, there's not the time, the investment of time, the investment of emotion as well. So there has to be, like Michael said, whether it's multimedia, something immersive, there has to be something tangible that people are willing to pay for again, instead of just strictly streaming and
Well, you know,
pay your $10.
That's a question I ask. That's a question I ask. Is it all going to be streaming in the future, or are the younger people going to decide they want to have physical media? They want something they can hold in their hand.
Oh, I just saw a whole set of videos based on there is an increase with young people wanting to own things again, because we've gone through a 10 to 15-year-old period where the increase of digital streaming, free YouTube videos, things like that, has been kind of the growing concern. But people are now saying, you know, I miss having a thing. When I want to buy something, when I want to purchase something, I want something back. I can look at. I can wrap my fingers around.
I think it's physical media, And you know, I look at my my 17-year-old grandson's room. There's not a single album. It's all just streaming. There's not a single CD. But you know what? I see a few other cassettes, surprisingly. I'm not sure why.
You know,
I'll bet you he's got physical copies of games, though, brother.
Oh no, he has tons of games. Yeah. The kid was 5 years old. He had a controller in each hand. The whole world was blown up on a big screen. You know,
some artist needs to do a game with their music on it.
Talking about the technology nowadays. I got a text today from my grandson. He's 15 years old, and he's learning how to play the guitar, but he's also a wizard on a computer. And he sent me this piece of music that he created. It sounds like a rock band. And it sounds great. And I told him, I said, well, you need to compose something for when I start my show. I want an intro song. And, you know, and it's just amazing how, you know, he's 15 years old, you know, and I don't know how long it took him to create this, but, you know, I know there can't be as much effort into that as there is getting four guys together with their instruments and putting something together. I mean, you know.
Well, there's a lot of things available. I've done a lot of recording like that. There's a lot of things available. For example, you can get snippets of orchestra, pull them in to orchestrate a song. I've got a video where I've got a lot of orchestra in the background. And what I did is I took a snippet, but then I'd cut that snippet and I'd create a melody I want by grabbing a snippet of another one and grabbing another. But a lot of these people just grab a 4-second orchestration off of the Apple library, drop that on top in the right key. But then also, if he makes mistakes, if he's actually recording instruments and he makes mistakes now with a lot of the recording, you can fix the tempo. You don't have to go back and re-record it. So you can do this stuff extremely fast, and that's its biggest enemy, because you don't have time to truly create, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all done in such a flash. You know, if that was true, think of some of the alternative takes of Dark Side of the Moon and what we actually got.
Yeah.
Think about it. It wouldn't have been the masterpiece. It would have been a good album, though. I do like some of those alternative takes. But it wasn't finished. They needed time. They had to live with it in the studio for it to be able to work that way, you know? And that's the problem with a lot of the artists today. Dial up a writer. Oh, Frank, he's on 2 out of the last 20 #1 hits. He's a good one. We need a song where she has contention with a man of another race, because that's the part of this theme we want to do. He dials that in. They dial up effects. They bring in hired guns of every sort, and it's over in a week, and it's out in 3 days later, thinking that they are actually John Lennon.
We're just about an hour over the hour goal I had for you. So I'm going to wrap this up. Save all those good thoughts for next week. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you all being here. This was a fun show. And I want to thank everybody in the chat. We appreciate all your support. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. And I'll just mention again, I'm getting ready to run my contest celebrating 200 videos, 200 YouTube videos, and my push for 700 subscribers. So look forward to everybody entering my contest, and let's all have fun with it. All right. I'm going to sign off now. Thanks, everybody, very much. And that's Royce's World today. What's that, Dan?
Yeah, is the next show this Sunday?
Sunday, yeah, Sundays.
Okay.
Yeah, Sunday 6:30.
Back on
Okay,
schedule.
thanks, guys. Good night,
Dan,
everybody.
Royce, Michael, great seeing you
Good
guys
night.
again.